Yeah, I know. Just waiting to, yeah. Good there. And ready.
This is KC Sports Tonight.
Hey everybody, welcome to KC Sports Tonight, the streaming edition at 5:30. I'm Scott Reiss, and the guy to my left, who you will see momentarily, is Jared Koller. Look at that.
Hello, hello. Happy Wednesday.
I push the button here, it comes out there. It's
He's
fantastic.
a wizard, folks.
I am far from that. Striving for competence is where I'm at with this whole contraption, but I think we're good. The stream is up. We're ready to rock. We will start with the Kansas City Royals, who will
Boys
play
in blue.
Game 3 of 4 in their series this week in Minneapolis. That game tonight, first pitch 6:40. And Jared will tell you the Royals have won 8 of their last 11 games.
Not wrong, Scott, not wrong.
I will tell you the Royals have lost their last 3 games. They have
Also
not had
not
a
wrong.
4 games. They haven't had a 4-game skid the entire season. I'll let you start here. I've got thoughts, but I will let you start with what you have seen the last couple of days with this Royals team.
Right, I mean, listen, I kid when I say 8 of 11 because it obviously was an 8-game win streak and a 3-game losing streak. But, Scott, not often does a team have a long win streak, they lose 1 game, and then have another long win streak. All right, the exception probably the 1977 Royals, who won 16 in a row, lost 1, and then won 8 more. That's probably pretty unlikely. You know, a lot of times you see anytime a win streak more than 7 games, they lose the next 2 games. So 3 is obviously a little bit more than you like. But on the whole, if 11 days ago you told me, hey, the Royals are going to win 8 of their next 11, you'd take that. Okay, so that's where it's, you know, the sky's not falling because they've lost 3 in a row. I think, you know, it's easy to get in the day-to-day and over analyze the wins and say, hey, they're going to the World Series when they win, or, hey, this team needs to trade everybody at a deadline when they lose. So not that anybody's surprised, but I'm not panicking after a 3-game losing streak. But you'd like to see them at least split these last 2 games in Minnesota.
So here's my thing. It is certainly not panic time. And obviously you are correct in that you can't read too much into a 3-game losing streak in Major League Baseball. My concern is, look, and the pitching continues to be fantastic, and I know you've got some numbers on 3 runs or fewer. What is it, all but 3 or 4 games this season, something like that? I mean, it's crazy. So the starters continue to be fantastic. The bullpen I still think has been good enough, but they don't hit on the road. And this is now a trend. We're a third of the way into the season. The batting average away from Kauffman Stadium is .229. That's like 25th in Major League Baseball. Last night, 5 hits. The last 3 nights, they basically haven't scored until late in the game, and then the furious rally. And that's great, and I love that it shows, perseverance, and I love that it shows the game is never over because they're going to fight till the end. 2 nights ago, they came back from 6-1 down, made it 6-5. But let's be honest, it was a hit by pitch, an infield single, an error. It's not like they came up and hit 2 doubles and 2 homers to get back to 6-5. My point is the lack of offense on the road is to me a red flag. And when you take Michael Massey out of the mix, not that he's a world beater, but he's been a very solid player. Yeah. And he was, I think, just hitting his stride. He had hit a 3-run homer the day he got hurt. Now he's on the injured list, hopefully for not more than the 15 days. But you look at the bottom of that lineup, Jared, on most days, and you look at those batting averages,
not great.
220,
well, that's why Massey is a blow.
Right,
exactly.
Yeah. And so that to me, and look, this isn't the LA Dodgers. This isn't the $300 million payroll. It's not obviously not going to be a flawless roster, but they do need to figure out how to hit away from home. If they could almost split the difference, because they're so good in Kansas City and they've been underachieving, I think, on the road.
Yeah,
to me, that is at least a legitimate red flag.
I honestly, the thing you got to keep in mind with baseball is we're still dealing with sample sizes that, it's not nothing, but I don't think it's like this team is scared of play. Like, I think there's some scared. I think there's some flukiness to it. I don't think it's like, they don't enjoy their hotel selection, whereas they sleep better in their bunk bed at home in Kansas City. Yeah. I think as the season goes on, will they hit better at home than they will on the road? Yeah, but I don't read a whole lot into it, Scott. If we're to break these numbers down a little bit more for your concerns with the offense, what I think is the bigger storyline is runners on base versus runners not on base. Because, and there's a positive and negative this, all right? So hang with me here. In the American League, the Royals are the third worst hitting team in all of the American League when there's no runners on. All right, so when they're starting an inning, they have the third worst, okay? They are the number 2 hitting team in the American League with runners on and with runners in scoring position, all right? So it's a little bit, some would say lucky, hey, they have clutch hitting. So when they have runners on, that's when they're driving in runs. And eventually, over a 162-game season, you think that might correct. You're not going to be as clutch. I mean, a big reason, Salvador Perez and Bobby Witt Jr. have been great with runners on, even Michael Garcia to a degree.
Right.
However, here's the silver lining, Scott. You know who is the best hitting team with runners on base in the American League? The Cleveland Guardians. Do you know who is the worst hitting team without any runners on in the American League? The Cleveland Guardians. So it's...
So regression is coming for both equally, is what
exactly.
you're saying.
I think the Royals, and we're starting to see that. Yeah. Listen, you talk about these last 3 games. They've had the game-tying run on base in the 9th inning of the last 3 games. Those are, more than not, for a lot of times this year, they've come through. Listen, on Tuesday night, they had Dairon Blanco on first with nobody out as the game-tying run, and they ended up not getting anything. That, if they're a little bit luckier earlier in the year, that kind of evens itself out. So I think, yes, there's going to be some regression, but I also think there'll be some regression with the Guardians, and then the Twins probably also improve, and it's a 3-team race.
So you see the 3-team race as it stands right now. Cleveland 3.5 up on the Royals, 6.5 up on Minnesota. That gap between the Royals and Twins was 5 2 days ago. Now it's 3. So to your point, you got to get at least. I understand that it's early, but you really want to get at least one. The last thing that would be a pretty significant blow on one side and a pretty significant momentum boost on another side to have the Twins go from 5 back of the Royals to 1 back of the Royals after 1 series. That's pretty major. You don't want to get swept in a 4-game series.
But I think there's reason to be confident that it won't. And even if it does, it'd be the first time this year that's happened, in the sense that the Royals' longest losing streak is 3 games. They've yet to lose 4 in a row. And I think the biggest reason why is the starting pitching, in the sense that regardless of what your starting pitcher does, win or lose, you're confident that the next day you're going to have a good chance to win,
no
which is
doubt.
something Royals fans haven't seen in many years. You alluded to the numbers just to let the great people know. Since April 30th, so now, the last month essentially, Royals starters have thrown 5+ innings, allowing 3 runs or less in 22 of 26 starts.
Yeah.
So that means almost every game, a quality start is 6 innings, 3 runs or less. This is 5, but still, when you're into the bullpen and at worst you're down 3-0, that's a winnable game, especially for this team that has done really well in late innings. But even as the average, because keep in mind, a couple of those starts were really lopsided, the average since April 30th is 6 innings per start, 2 earned runs per start with 6.5 strikeouts. This starting pitching staff, Scott, it's to the point where it's not a fluke. These guys are consistently strong day in and day out, and that lends itself to avoiding the long losing streaks, I think.
So one more thing on the Guardians, just as an aside. Have you looked at their schedule?
Yeah, they've had a pretty easy schedule.
It's like they play the Rockies, Marlins, and Angels just over and over and over.
So it'll even out. That's where,
they had a reasonably difficult April, and their numbers weren't great in April. Their May has been as easy a month as you'll find across Major League Baseball.
Even their April, there was a lot against the White Sox, and it's like I honestly think that the Twins and Guardians are better. Like Royals fans, again, I think it's too early to be looking at standings, but I don't think it's like, we're only rooting for the Guardians to lose here in Kansas City. No, I think the Guardians, Twins, and Royals are fairly equal teams that, when you play them, you like to win these games, like you said, Scott. But also keep in mind the Royals have yet to play the Guardians.
Right.
So they're going to have 13 opportunities to make up plenty of ground.
Right.
The tougher spot is the Twins, who now have had the Royals' numbers at least a couple times this year.
Tonight's pitching matchups, Seth Lugo going for his American League leading 9th win of the season. Bailey Ober, you may recall, pitched Game 3 of that opening series here in Kansas City, and the Royals won 11-0. They obliterated Bailey Ober, gave up 8 or 9 earned runs in an inning of play. He probably hasn't given up that many earned runs since that day combined. He's a pretty good pitcher, and that 4.33 ERA would probably be 2.3 if it wasn't for that one game. But that said, you always like your chances with Lugo, the way he's throwing the baseball. And, you want your best pitcher to be the stopper. You lose 3 in a row, you want your best guy on the mound. Well, right now, he may not be the most talented Royals starter, but he is right now their best pitcher, and he's going to get a chance to prove it again tonight.
And I think Seth Lugo's been great. We know that. But Brady Singer's got that ERA.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit better than maybe the eye test shows. I think he's given up some more hits that haven't turned into runs. But listen, that's a credit to him and the defense. That the fact that, you've got some traffic on the bases, inning in and out, and you get out of it most of the time, that's an improvement, Scott. Remember, for a couple of years, we talked about how Brady Singer struggled with runners on base. Like, he'd be cruising, then once he lets up a run or two, then suddenly it's a big inning. Brady Singer's pitched really well this year, not at the level of Seth Lugo, not at the level of pure amazement that Cole Reagans can flash, but Brady Singer's a guy that was really good 2 years ago, but last year, in part because of the World Baseball Classic, he really only had a couple spurts of really strong starts. He struggled last year as a whole, and for him to right now have a 2.63 ERA, I don't think he's going to make the All-Star game, but I don't want to overlook Brady Singer just because Seth Lugo and Cole Reagans have been 2 of the best in the American League.
No, I think that's a fair point. We've talked about Brady Singer. The numbers speak for themselves. You got an ERA around 2.5. You're obviously doing a lot of good things, and you like their chances in that game tomorrow as well.
But I think there is some regression with Singer coming.
Sure.
I don't think
there's regression with both of those guys.
Man, with Lugo, I don't think he's going to finish with a 1.74 ERA,
no.
But I'm Scott, if you said who's more likely to be better from here on out, I'm taking Lugo over Singer. Is that a crazy take?
No, I don't think that's crazy.
Okay.
Now, what does that mean? Does that mean you think one's going to have an ERA of 2.5 and one's going to have an ERA of 2.2, or does that mean one's going to be 3 and one's going to be 3.5? I mean, that's a different discussion of how much regression is coming. But I think
Lugo is more real than Singer.
Yeah, maybe.
Which the pedigree, Brady Singer, a first-round pick, has
Right.
had some success, is younger. But I think Lugo doesn't have the wear and tear on his arm that his age suggests, and the way he's able to mix his pitches. I just think that he's able to adapt as the season goes on, whereas Singer, as we know, is continuing to develop that changeup, that high four-seam fastball. I think there's going to be some days where Singer's sinker and slider, don't work, because that's what we've seen. Any given day, Brady Singer can go out there and shove, but he's also prone to, on one day when one of his main 2 pitches isn't working, he can get hit. And I think that'll come. But, Scott, that's okay for a number 3 starter. Last year, you were asking him to be your ace.
Right.
When, every month or 2, your starter has a game where they maybe go 4 innings, 4 runs, 5 runs. That's okay. You can live with that.
Well, and there's depth, too, and that's not – the way Alec Marsh is thrown – in that spot, you got Chris Bubich now rehabbing, and he'll be an option in a couple of weeks. And even Daniel Lynch, who got the 1 shot, came up and threw 5 shutout innings.
Jonathan Bolin down there has done well in AAA.
So all of a sudden, when you feel comfortable going 6 or maybe 7 or 8 deep, not a lot of teams have that luxury.
Scott, remember the pitching staff last year? You were a big Jordan Lyles fan.
I was not.
Scott and I always had these conversations, and I'm like, Scott, I don't know about Jordan Lyles. He said, he's right there. He's just around. No, I'm kidding.
No, that's
Scott
not what he said,
is glad there's improvement on the staff.
Yeah.
Also, Zach Greinke was on the staff last year.
Yes, he was.
Daniel
Lynch. Zach Greinke, who, by the way,
Bubich.
has not retired and is still hoping to be on a Major League roster at some point this summer. Just saying.
That's the only disappointing part about the Royals being really good is I would have liked him to come back to the Boys in Blue to get that 3,000 strikeouts in a Royals uniform. I don't know if there's a spot for him. Scott,
no, I don't think there is. All right, so let's move on to what is really, it's a cool story and it's big news. Whoops, jumped the gun. Really big news for Major League Baseball today, and obviously very much so locally here in Kansas City, is that baseball announcing that the Negro League statistics will be incorporated into the Major League Baseball record books. I would argue this is long overdue, but it is a massive shift in terms of the history of a sport, which more than any other sport, Jared, lives and dies by its statistics. And so,
by history, yeah.
And you see the note on the screen, Ty Cobb, for about a century, has been the all-time baseball leader in career batting average, hitting .367. And after a century or so of that, He's just been passed by a guy who's been dead for 77 years in Josh Gibson, who hit 372. In fact, we have a visual, too, my little Josh Gibson bobblehead. And this man right here is now the all-time Major League Baseball career batting average leader. He was much – this is not to scale. He was much bigger than this in real
That was about to be really impressive. Some Stuart Little action.
It's an Eddie Goodell. But no, this is a massive deal for Major League Baseball, and it's super cool that it hits so close to home here in Kansas City.
Yeah, I don't have a bobblehead prop. I didn't come prepared.
That's okay.
No, I think there's a couple layers to this, Scott. One, I'd be interested in your take in the sense that, because you've got two sons, and I, being a Kansas City kid, grew up here, was very aware of the Negro Leagues through the Negro League Baseball Museum. Okay, I went there on school field trips. They would take us there. I did so many different book reports and history reports on Satchel Paige.
Yeah.
Okay, I knew that Jackie Robinson started his career as the Monarchs. I knew who Cool Papa Bell, Josh Gibson. I knew these guys as a 9-year-old kid. But do the kids in California know the stories of Josh Gibson and know that he was
they do not
Babe Ruth of his time?
100% no.
And so for me, that's where I'm like, oh yeah, okay, but listen, everybody knows that. I knew that, but when I think about it more for the sport as a whole and the country as a whole, I'm like, you know what, this is kind of cool in the sense that
that's why this is such a big deal.
Yeah, and so I think that's cool to have to remind all our Kansas City viewers that maybe go to the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum the whole time to realize that, hey, we're pretty blessed in our baseball historical knowledge, that we appreciate the Negro Leagues, and now more of the country hopefully will.
Now, I will say my youngest son is a baseball junkie, and even as a native Californian, he knows Josh Gibson. He knows Satchel Paige. He
Shout
knows
out Cody.
these
there
guys.
You go.
But I did not growing up in Los Angeles. And I, as I got older and I became more of a baseball fan, I started to hear the names. I certainly knew who Satchel Paige was, but I, couldn't have told you probably what team he played for when I was in high school. So it is just a very different perspective, I think, in a lot of the country. And it's been cool coming here and seeing the passion for that aspect of the game as a baseball junkie myself, that exists here. So yeah, no, I think it's great for the game. It's hard when stats change because baseball is so tied to its stats.
Yeah, and I get that there might be frustration with people, with some people maybe thinking, oh, this changes history, but context is important. And we know that, okay, Josh Gibson did not play in as many games as Ty Cobb. We know that Josh Gibson played against sometimes competition that was better than what Major League Baseball was at the time, sometimes worse. We know that it's all subjective.
Yeah.
Guess what? Babe Ruth played against different competition than Shohei Ohtani. That's just how it works when you have a sport for more than a century.
Can you document that?
Yeah, we can reenact some swings here. You can see my Babe Ruth impression. But no, it's not the end-all, be-all, and that we can still appreciate the career that Ty Cobb had and the interesting person that he was, while also acknowledging that, hey, Josh Gibson's one of the best power hitters the sport of baseball has ever seen. That can be true. We're not saying that the history that now is being overtaken in some regards no longer exists. All right, there's still lots of recognition for that. It's just maybe asking people to think a little more holistically. But, Scott, it's not the first time history's changed. In the 50s and 60s, they added in stats from 1870. Go look at a baseball reference page of the 1890 Cleveland Spiders. There's crazy stuff. And that's almost even more odd than what they were doing in the Negro Leagues. So, listen, baseball changes. They added the DH in the 60s. Then they added full-time DH just a couple years ago.
They added the pitch clock.
The sport changes, history changes. That doesn't mean we're ignoring or discounting things that have come along the way, but yeah.
They added robotic umpires.
Hopefully.
Oh, no, wait, they haven't done that yet.
Oh, hey, knock on wood. Shout out Angel Hernandez. Great career. Nice guy, not a good umpire.
And the crowd goes wild. Okay. Chiefs back in action this week. Unfortunately for all of us, meaning you and me and everybody watching and listening, it's radio silence the first 2 days of OTAs this week, that being yesterday and today. However, tomorrow, open season, and the camera's back in. We get to see a little practice, or at least a little stretching before practice.
There you
go. And we will find out who is up and who is not up this week in terms of the injury updates. I can tell you Xavier Worthy not up because you saw him in a video clip they sent out yesterday, and he was wearing sweatpants and not
Well,
workout
yeah, they're
clothes.
not wearing pads. No one's wearing pads right now.
No, but it was not. It was not the look of a guy who was
Gotcha.
participating in the workout. But it's the assistant coaches taking center stage
Predominantly, yeah.
tomorrow, which is interesting. And again, you talk about the myriad of reasons that we are spoiled here with Kansas City and its NFL franchise, but Andy Reid has consistently surrounded himself with really, really good coaches. Obviously,
Yeah.
Steve Spagnuolo got so much great publicity last year down the stretch and into the playoffs, and deservedly so. To have that consistency at the defensive coordinator position, I think, is huge, and we saw reaping the benefits of that, obviously, in a major way a year ago. Matt Nagy, I think, silenced some critics last year. I think there were some who saw him as a failed head coach with the Bears and thought, oh, this guy's not really the next thing, and he's a retread and we can do better. And everybody liked Eric Bieniemy, so it was, there was, I think, a transition. Well, everybody. But I think as the season went on and you got into the playoffs, people became more supportive of Matt Nagy and accepting.
Okay.
And I think now he's the guy. I think we're all good with it. And back-to-back Super Bowls, going for number 3. So all these guys will be talking tomorrow about the next run.
Yeah, no, it's something Andy Reid's done from early on, is having, like, every week the coordinators talk. Dave Toub, Matt Nagy, and Steve Spagnuolo talk every week. That's not necessarily always been done for every team across the league, and a lot of times we get even the ancillary coaches and stuff. And I think you're right, Scott. And Andy Reid's coaching tree is vast and impressive for a reason. There's successful coaches along the way that have learned from Reid, and I think that gets overlooked here. And I think last year was the first year it really didn't, because the "In Spags We Trust" T-shirts from your boy Justin Reid.
That was so great.
But I think Spags got his love last year, which was really cool to see. And it was deservedly so, because the defense is why they got to the Super Bowl and in many ways won the Super Bowl. So I think it's interesting with Matt Nagy. I think people forget because, he was a former Andy Reid offensive coordinator. He'd been around the system. But last year was his first year as offensive coordinator. And I know everybody thinks Andy Reid runs the show, but listen, Matt Nagy has responsibilities as well, as does everyone else. I mean, Dave Merritt, one of the best coaches in the league for what he's done in the secondary, Scott, with a lot of young guys. They've let a lot of key players walk out the door through the years. Charvarius Ward went and was a great corner for the San Francisco 49ers. What have the Chiefs secondary done since then? Bring in unproven guys, and Dave Merritt has made him great. All right? They're asking him to do that again this year after letting L'Jarius Sneed go. Andy Heck, offensive line guru. He's been here. He's one of the longest tenured players at One Arrowhead Drive. And he's now got some new offensive linemen depth-wise, which, Scott, I think is important because Trey Smith, Creed Humphrey entering their last year, Joe Tooney, we don't know how much longer he's going to be a Chief, and you just lost Nick Allegretti, your depth piece, to Washington on a 3-year deal. I think the depth chart is interesting to watch for offensive line. And then, Scott, what do you think of Connor Embry? Because I think a lot of people were really down on him, understandably so, but he's a young coach. I know the wide receiver core was not very good, but I think this is a big year because you're investing another wide receiver in Xavier Worthy after you drafted Rashee Rice the year before, after you drafted Sky Moore the year before. Connor Embry, as wide receivers coach, can't say, hey, you're not giving me anything to work with. A lot of draft intel has come into that room, and they need to be better this year. I think he's the one coach on the staff that people are like, hey, this guy needs to do his job better. Is that fair? He's not the guy running routes, catching balls, but it's a storyline.
Or dropping balls.
Right.
And I don't pretend, look, obviously we're not in meetings. I don't pretend to be able to sit here and critique the Chiefs wide receiver coach because, again, what I saw last year was guys making individual plays that were detrimental with all the drops. I saw guys giving up on routes. I saw guys, the things that we've hashed and rehashed over and over are not necessarily the fault of the guy who's coaching them. It speaks as much to the players, to the character, to the discipline, to the ability as it does, I think, to the guy pulling the string. So I don't know. I mean, I can't sit here and give you a critique of what I think of Connor Embry because I don't know.
Right. It's just the idea that if the wide receivers struggle again this year,
there is no question he is, of all the guys, he's the one who's going to be most under the microscope of all the position coaches based on what happened a year ago, fair or not.
Yeah.
And that position group, I think, is going to be more under the microscope than any other group. Add the Rashee Rice off-field issues and the possible suspension looming. You get a first-round pick who's a wide receiver, so there's inherently going to be all eyeballs on number one. Kadarius Toney is a story, for better or for worse. He's a story. Sky Moore is
but that's
a story,
another investment.
For better or for worse.
They traded a draft pick for Kadarius Toney.
Right.
Like, they've put a lot of resources.
Yes. No, you can't look at this group and say there's no talent.
Right. And so that's where, they just dropping the balls? Is that on the wide receiver coach? Right. No, but is it because he's not able to get them to focus more in practice? I don't know. I don't think so. Listen, as you said, I can't critique it, but I know that's something fans have been talking about.
Yep. No doubt. One more headline today I want to make sure we get to. Good times at Kansas. It's a good time to be a KU Jayhawk fan for a number of reasons. Not the least of which is what went down today. And actually, it's no longer a report. Kansas confirmed it. Travis Goff, the athletic director, a 7-year contract extension, which, according to the initial ESPN report, is extremely lucrative, I believe, were the words that they used.
He's making more than Scott now.
Which means the translation more than the two of us, which is certainly well-deserved. He's been there for, 4 years now, and Lance Leipold, home run, right? Obviously, Bill
to
Self,
this point, for sure.
Bill
Self, lifetime contract, which Goff gave him.
You look at the quantum leaps taken by the football program in the last 3 years. Basketball remaining elite, women's basketball taking a significant step, and those are your three headline sports. So I think that sky's the limit right now for that athletic program. You got the money coming in. You got the stadium being built.
There you go. That's the big one.
And the stadium, obviously, is maybe I buried the lead there. But, so the alumni are buying in. They are all in. Clearly, they are thriving in the NIL world with regard to men's basketball, because you see all the players that Bill Self is now able to come in. And let's be honest, how are you getting players now? It's not being a blue blood. It's the bag. It's how much money you're offering. So it just seems like the stars are really aligning for the Kansas athletic department, and Travis Goff is the guy pulling the strings.
Yeah, Scott, let's be clear. I think the biggest reason why this is getting done is because he did what athletic directors before him couldn't. And that's not – I'm not even talking about hiring a good football coach or winning in football. Yeah. The stadium. Yeah. That's the fact that they got enough – because one of the biggest parts – I think the number one job of an athletic director is to hire the right football and men's basketball coach. But after that, it's fundraising. All right, and Kansas is not in the SEC. Kansas is not in the Big Ten. They don't have as much of that league revenue that those conferences that I get it if you're a Kansas fan, Big 12 fan. I'm just saying that's what it is. Mizzou gets more money annually because of the SEC network, because of the league that they're in. So it's harder, in theory, to keep up facilities-wise. But that hasn't stopped Travis Goff, and that's why I give credit to Travis Goff for raising the money that now they're building it to the degree that they're playing games at Children's Mercy Park and Arrowhead Stadium, which is also innovative thinking. Scott, I'm a big Travis Goff fan. I think he's really smart. I remember first interviewing him at the Final Four. Well, Danny Welniak interviewed him. I was holding the camera, and I remember being really impressed because he was very new to Kansas at that time. And just thinking this guy gets it, as far as not talking about himself, talking about the things that matter, talking about, hey, Bill Self is this kind of coach that gets this out of the program. And just the way he carried himself. I remember Neil at his introductory press conference being very impressed as well. So I think this was long overdue. But you got to keep going. There's legit expectations now for Kansas football. We know basketball kind of up and running. Scott, does it surprise you how spotty of an athletic director track record Kansas has had over the last couple decades, dating back to like Roy Williams, in the sense that Kansas is, in my opinion, one of the best schools in the country because you have that historic basketball program, and football has had success at times. They're near Kansas City, yet remember when Bill Self was hired, there wasn't really an athletic director. They've gone through some weird tenures at AD while still being successful. I think it's not much to say Travis Goff is well on his way to being the most successful AD KU's had in at least a couple decades.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. Does it surprise me? No, only because I've seen it coast to coast in major, Power 5 conferences. I've seen a litany of really good and really poor athletic directors at schools, and it does not always coincide with the level of the school's performance and that sort of thing. So it doesn't surprise me, but I'm with you 100%. I think he's clearly the right guy.
Yes.
And I love that they've locked him up long term. I think this, there's nowhere to go, continue going up for this.
Goes with Lance Leipold, and he's the guy who hired him. And it wasn't, Scott, when Leipold was hired, it wasn't like everybody was saying, yes, we got to hire Lance Leipold. Like, he wasn't as known of a commodity, and now he's considered top 15 coach in the country. But to your point, you look at KU's top competitors. K-State had a weird athletic director tenure. Remember Frank Martin left because he didn't get along with the AD? And now Gene Taylor, I think you would agree, has done a great job with hiring Jerome Tang as head coach and keeping Chris Kleiman happy. I think we're Gene Taylor supporters around here. And then Mizzou had Mike Alden, great success with Gary Pinkel. But then, Scott, think about Mac Rhodes, that was a failure. Jim Sturck, I don't know if that was a failure, but that didn't work out. Then Desiree Reed-Francois just left for Arizona up out of the blue. Now they've got Laird Veach. Mizzou's had a weird time at athletic director too. So and these are KU's top competitors. I think Gene Taylor's the contemporary right now that Goff's kind of going toe-to-toe with, and I think I'd probably take Goff out of the three just because of the way was able to elevate KU's program. I think Gene Taylor's done a great job, but if you had to give me an AD for the next 5 years, I'm taking Travis Goff right now out of our three local schools.
I will leave it there. 6 o'clock is upon us. We are out of time.
The witching hour.
The witching hour. I'm going to go do the 6 o'clock news. We will revisit this tomorrow. We'll tell you all about Chiefs OTAs. Until then,
James Shields salute.
Jared says thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you guys tomorrow.